In this video, we'll be talking about switch correction, how we can calibrate it, and how we can adjust it with an OptimumCNC plasma cutting software. To adjust the switch correction, go into your Advanced tab, Settings, Plasma Settings, and here we're going to have the timeline with our value B being switch correction, or IHC correction height. This switch correction value signifies the distance that the system has to correct for during the probing process. So essentially, our torch, when it's first contacting the metal during the initial height control process, will go down, it will touch the metal, and once it does, it will engage a little switch at the back of the torch mount. However, to engage it, it will have to travel down ever so slightly in order for the switch to actually activate, meaning that there is some small distance that we need to account for. This distance will be slightly different machine to machine, so it's a good idea to calibrate for it and make sure that we have it set correctly. To perform the calibration, we'll need some kind of a reference plate. Here we're going to be using a reference plate that we send with some of our machines. However, you can use any piece of metal that you have lying around that's small and thin enough, perhaps a credit card, etc. Anything that you have handy. Here we're going to go ahead and measure it with our calipers, and we're going to get a value which is, in our case, around 0.120. So here in this window, first we'll change this A value, or ignition height, to 0.120. And we're going to set this correction height to a value that I personally know is a little too high. You can play around with this, but a good starter would be something around 0.15. So here we have our A and B values adjusted. Let's go and run the torch probe. And once we've run it, let's try and fit our reference plate under the torch. And in this case, it goes in very easily. There's a lot of air gap. It's too large of a switch correction. So we'll go and adjust this to a smaller value, in this case 0.05 instead of 0.15. We try to run this again, and once we've run the probing procedure, we try to fit the reference plate again, and we can see that we cannot fit the plate under. So we're going to go and adjust this value to be a little higher by about 30 thou to 0.08. Run the torch probe procedure again. And once we try and fit this plate under the torch, we can slide it under, but there is some resistance. In this case, it's usually better to adjust the switch correction to be a little bit higher. Typically a few thousandths of an inch higher is better than a few thousandths of an inch lower, so we're going to go and adjust it to 0.085. Run the torch probe again. Slide the reference plate under the torch, and here we have a plate that slides under the torch easily, but there's no real air gap, so we now have our switch correction. At this point, we're going to go back to this window. We're going to either take a photo or write this value down, this switch correction value B, so we can use it for all future cuts that are utilizing this floating head switch. And at this point, we're going to revert our cutting height to its proper value because we have switched it for the purposes of calibration. So here we're going to revert it to 0.14. And at this point, the calibration process is complete, and you can utilize the initial height correction procedure. Thank you for watching.